Hi, Doug Storsky for the U.S. Access Institute, LLC. Today we look at one specific element in our lesson series called Accessibility by the Element. That's where we take a quick look at the accessibility requirements and one specific element. We also do a comparison of the different ADA and state access codes and standards. We try to cover it from coast to coast. Remember, our goal is eliminating the confusion and access compliance. So check us out at www.usaccessinstitute.com. Okay, here we go. First, we start with the periodic table of accessible elements. It's not a real table in the access standard sense of things, but hey, we want to make access fun. We begin today, as always, in the 2010 ADA standards for accessible design. Next, we look at section 705, and that covers detectable warnings. Then we look at 705.1. It states, detectable warnings shall consist of a surface of truncated domes. Section 705.2 on platform edges states that detectable warning surfaces at platform boarding edges shall be 24 inches wide and shall extend the full length of the public use areas of the platform. And that is all the ADA standards have to say about detectable warnings. Before we go any further, I want to talk about the requirements that were in the 1991 ADA standards for accessible design. In section 4.7.7 on detectable warnings, it stated that a curb ramp shall have detectable warnings and that the detectable warning shall extend the full width and depth of the curb ramp. In other words, the entire ramp was required to be covered with the detectable warnings per the 1991 standard. And section 4.29.5 required detectable warnings at hazardous vehicle areas, and section 4.29.6 required the edges of reflecting pools to have detectable warnings. This is why we see what we see sometimes, as in this ramp completely covered with truncated domes. Now we will compare the 2010 standards to the other standards. The 2012 Texas accessibility standards agree with the 2010 ADA standards, as does the 2018 Illinois Accessibility Code. The Florida Building Code is in agreement with the requirements for detectable warnings at boarding platforms, but they add section 406.8 on detectable warnings. It states that curb ramps subject to Department of Transportation regulations shall have a detectable warning complying with 705. The detectable warning shall extend the full width of the curb ramp, exclusive of flared sides, and shall extend either the full depth of the curb ramp or 24 inches deep minimum measured from the back of the curb on the ramp surface. The ICC A117.1 standard changes it up even more. Here, detectable warnings are required at curb ramps, blended transitions, pedestrian at-grade rail crossings not located within a street or highway, at boarding platforms for buses and rail vehicles, and pedestrian refuge islands. Under this standard, detectable warning surfaces shall extend 24 inches minimum in the direction of travel and be full width of the surface as shown in these figures. The 2020 Minnesota Accessibility Code has the same requirement for boarding platforms, but adds section 406.12, detectable warnings at raised marked crossings. It states that marked crossings that are raised to the same level as the adjoining sidewalk shall be preceded by a detectable warning 24 inches in depth. The detectable warning shall extend the full width of the marked crossing. In the scoping sections of the 2022 California Building Code, detectable warnings are required at platform edges, curb ramps, islands or cut-through mediums, bus stops, blended transitions, reflecting pools, and track crossings. In California, truncated domes shall be 24 inches wide for platform edges and 36 inches wide in curb ramps, islands or cut-through mediums, bus stops, blended transitions, reflecting pools, and track crossings with several exceptions. Now that covers a lot of ground very quickly. So detectable warnings requirements are anything but consistent across the U.S. Sometimes they are required, sometimes not. If required, we have seen full depths, 24 inches, 36-inch depths, all required, depending on where you are in the U.S. So in conclusion, detectable warnings require us to refer to the applicable standard each time we deal with them. So thanks for watching, and remember that here at the U.S. Access Institute, LLC, our goal is eliminating the confusion and access compliance. So check us out at www.usaccessinstitute.com.